I'm Trace Gallagher in for Shep. It's noon here in California, where the weather is finally helping to slow down the state's deadliest wildfire. But the flames have destroyed thousands of homes, and families are still looking for missing loved ones. We have live Team Fox coverage. The Justice Department reports Matthew Whitaker can legally serve as acting attorney general. We'll talk to Judge Andrew Napolitano, who says the president created a dangerous situation by appointing Whitaker. And a warning about America's military power. National security experts say it has eroded to a dangerous degree, and the U.S. might actually lose a war with Russia or China. That's all ahead. Sir, becoming a member of Congress is similar to starting out at a new school, right? Figuring out where all the important get-togethers are, which crew you should hang out with, not to mention finding the bathrooms. Some incoming lawmakers going through that process right now. We will take you to Capitol Hill for that next. Session and the jockeying for position and political power is well underway, at least among the veterans of Capitol Hill. But for the newest members, the first order of business included taking a class photo. Our chief congressional correspondent, Mike Emanuel, is live for us on Capitol Hill. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Trace. Yeah, leadership for the new Congress is taking shape, with House Republicans deciding a member from California will be their leader. Republican Kevin McCarthy of California has been elected to be the Republican leader in the new Congress, easily defeating Ohio's Jim Jordan 159-43. Whip Steve Scalise from Louisiana will continue, winning unanimous support. And a new member of the leadership team is Wyoming Congressman Liz Cheney, who will serve as conference chair, a position her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, once held. In terms of the next House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi wants that job again. She's working it in terms of getting prominent Democrats to endorse her and outside interest groups. And she's making pitches like this one.
As we open this session, let us just find our common ground as to how we go forward. First, let us recognize that we achieved a great victory.
But there are some Democrats who suggest Pelosi has a numbers problem, noting that a lot of the new Democrats voted or campaigned on change.
Well, I think showing the support of other people, having people who are current members, longtime standing members, who think that moving forward we need some new leadership and change.
In the Senate, the Republican leadership will look mostly the same, with Mitch McConnell continuing as majority leader. The changes are John Thune from South Dakota will now be number 2 as the Republican whip. Iowa's Joni Ernst will serve as vice chair of the GOP conference, and she's talking about this honor.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity to share our wonderful, overwhelming message of prosperity here in the United States, not only with the members of this body, but also with our fantastic constituents back home.
It's my honor to have been asked by my colleagues to continue serving as leader. I can honestly say not a day goes by when I'm not humbled and honored by this opportunity to serve my colleagues, the institution of the Senate, and our incredible country in whatever measure I'm capable.
Wyoming is looking pretty powerful in the new Congress, with Senator John Barrasso and Liz Cheney part of the respective Republican leadership teams. Trace?
Mike Emanuel live for us on Capitol Hill. Mike, thank you. The U.S. military has eroded to a dangerous degree, according to a new bipartisan report out today, and it warns the U.S. might struggle to win or perhaps lose a war against China or Russia. National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin reporting live from the Pentagon. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Trace. Well, the 98-page report by this independent, bipartisan 12-person against peer or near-peer competitors, mainly due to budget instability and insufficient funding provided by Congress. While the U.S. focused on terrorism threats, the report notes China and Russia have studied what have long been the U.S. military's strategic advantages and found ways to counter with hypersonic weapons and artificial intelligence. Trace.
And separately, Jennifer, Defense Secretary James Mattis was at the U.S.-Mexico border and says the U.S. will be sending more troops there.
He said there are 5,900 troops who have been sent since the end of October, and the number could go as high as 7,000. He told reporters while traveling with embattled Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, with her by his side, he did not anticipate military personnel coming into direct contact with migrants. That's why most are not armed.
They don't need their weapons. The engineers to lay the barbed wire, the soldiers, Marines doing that are overwatched by MPs who are armed and the normal force protection of wherever they go.
Unlike a deployment overseas, these troops who will miss Thanksgiving with their families are not getting combat pay. They are living in tents and eating prepackaged MREs, even though fast food and grocery stores are nearby. The president mentioned the migrant caravan heading to the southern border many times ahead of the midterm elections, but has not mentioned it much since then. Today, Republican Senator Jeff Flake called the deployment of troops to the border a political stunt. 5 of the 39 units deployed to the border are public affairs units with the military, suggesting the Pentagon knows this is more about messaging than reinforcing the border. Trace?
Jennifer Griffin live for us at the Pentagon. Jennifer, thank you. The special counsel, Robert Mueller, has questions. Now there's word the Trump legal team may have answers. And soon. That's ahead. Also, we'll take you to Florida, one day ahead of the deadline to finish the recount, where one county suffered another setback. Things more difficult in Florida as workers recount votes from last week's midterm elections. We still don't know who won the races for Senate and governor, and the deadline to finish the recount is tomorrow. Phil Keating is live for us outside the Broward County Board of Elections in Lauderhill, Florida. Phil.
Trace, we are now less than 24 hours away from that Thursday 3 p.m. hard recount deadline, and most of the state's 67 counties have actually already finished. However, not some of the big ones like Broward County and Palm Beach County. Taking a live look inside the Palm Beach operation, ballots are moving finally again. Overnight, Palm Beach County had to redo a full day's worth of recounting after its old and overworked counting machines began malfunctioning. So 175,000 early votes, which had been recounted once, had to be recounted again.
You know, we didn't anticipate that we would have to run 100% of our ballots through these old machines. We anticipated we would have a pretty quiet midterm election as we used to. I guess that's not the new norm.
Looking live inside the Broward Recount Center, the ballots for mail-in votes and Election Day votes are still being sorted before the pages with the recount races on them can actually be recounted. Miami-Dade elections, however, saw the recount writing on the wall last week and prepared. It didn't wait until Sunday also to start, as Broward did. And last night, the results, Miami-Dade vote counters recounted their final ballot. The dramatic news yesterday about that Leon County judge giving Palm Beach County, which has indicated there's no way it can make that tomorrow afternoon deadline, 5 extra days to recount all of the 5 of the recount races. Well, it didn't last long because the Republican Secretary of State in Tallahassee quickly moved that ruling and that case to federal court, where it now stands. And we're also now hearing that federal investigators are looking into potential vote malfeasance by Florida Democrats leading up to Election Day after some cure documents, which deal with mail-in ballots, appear to have been forged, or at least had the dates changed on when they were due. Trace?
Yeah, the fight's a long way from being over. Phil Keating live for us in Lauderhill, Florida. Phil, thank you. The Georgia governor's race still undecided more than a week after the election. Unofficial results show Republican Brian Kemp with a slight lead, but Democrat Stacey Abrams says there are still enough uncounted votes to possibly force a runoff next month. Jonathan Seri reporting live for us in Atlanta. Jonathan.
Hey, Trace. Well, in order to force a December 4 runoff, Stacey Abrams would have to get enough votes to knock Brian Kemp to 50% or anywhere below that. Right now, Kemp is a fraction of a point above that threshold after getting the courts to mandate a review of previously disqualified ballots. Abrams supporters say they are now less than 18,000 votes away from forcing a runoff with Kemp.
If he is secure in his self-appointed determination that he is the victor, he should have no fear of walking right in here and joining this press conference. Because what are we asking for? To count every vote.
The Kemp campaign issued a statement saying after all the theatrics, the math remains the same. Abrams lost and Brian Kemp won. The election is over. Stacey Abrams needs to concede, end quote. Police arrested 15 protesters, including a Democratic state senator Tuesday, as they chanted "Count every vote" in the Georgia Capitol Rotunda. The civil rights group Care Georgia documented the arrest, saying the protesters were exercising their First Amendment rights, but police say they were enforcing a Georgia law that makes it a misdemeanor to disrupt meetings of the state legislature. Trace?
Jonathan Terry live for us in Atlanta. Jonathan, thank you. Back in Washington, meantime, some lawmakers are pushing for legislation to protect special counsel Robert Mueller. Two senators, one Democrat, one Republican, say they'll call for a floor vote on it, possibly as soon as today. This comes as we're hearing word of a potentially major development in the Russia investigation. A source telling our chief intelligence correspondent President Trump's legal team is finalizing his written answers to Mueller right now. Catherine Herridge is live for us in Washington. Catherine.
Well, Trace, late yesterday, we got a second source that confirmed to us that written answers are being finalized and could be submitted to the special counsel Robert Mueller and his team as early as the end of this week. Contacted by Fox, the president's lawyers had no immediate comment on the development. We understand the legal team has been preparing written responses about alleged coordination with Russia during the 2016 campaign and not obstruction of justice over the president's May 2017 firing of FBI Director James Comey. The president's legal team considers those questions infringing on the president's constitutional power to hire and fire. After the Justice Department Office of Legal Counsel released their opinion today, finding the acting attorney general appointment proper, Republicans and Democrats on the Hill addressed the impact on the Mueller probe.
We know how the president feels about the Mueller investigation, but he's never said he wants to shut it down. I've never heard anybody down there say they want to shut it down. I think it's in no danger, and so I don't think any legislation is necessary.
We want to make sure that the acting attorney general does not interfere with the Mueller investigation, and we believe our Republican colleagues will join us. You'll see on the floor later today a bipartisan unanimous consent statement, unanimous consent request to prevent the acting attorney general, Whitaker, from interfering.
On the special counsel, we've been basically in indictment watch, seeing if there's going to be any movement. One of my legal contacts pointed out, though, that you have almost what may be an interesting dynamic here, because the president's legal team will want to see any new indictment, especially if it goes to aides who had any kind of contact with the campaign before they submit their questions. And Mueller's team may want to see the answers to those questions before they file their indictment. So we'll see how that works out, Trace.
We shall see. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, live in D.C. Catherine, thank you. Well, the Justice Department today declaring it was perfectly legal for President Trump to appoint Matthew Whitaker as acting attorney general. But our own Judge Andrew Napolitano argues there's a very good reason why the president cannot do this. And he says keeping Whitaker in the post for now is going to have some pretty serious consequences. That is coming up. Matthew Whitaker as acting attorney general. The department's Office of Legal Counsel writing that his senior executive status at the department unquestionably gives him the authority to serve. Yesterday, officials in Maryland filed a lawsuit challenging Whitaker's appointment. They argue the president sidestepped the Constitution by choosing Whitaker instead of Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Former Attorney General Jeff Sessions resigned last week, saying President Trump asked him to step down. The chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live for us on the North Lawn. John.
In a 20-page memo that was released today, Trace, the Department of Justice argues that there were two tracks that the president could have followed in order to replace Sessions. One track would have been the line of succession at the Department of Justice, which, as you pointed out, would have flowed through the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. The other track was to use the Federal Vacancies Reform Act to replace the Attorney General on an interim basis. Now, the Department of Justice says if the president were to replace Sessions with a, quote, quote, principal officer, that person would need Senate confirmation, but that if he were to replace Sessions on an interim basis, which is what he says he's doing with Matt Whitaker, that person would not need to be Senate confirmed. And the memo of the Department of Justice writing, quote, consistent with our prior opinion and with centuries of historical practice and precedents, we advise that the president's designation of Mr. Whitaker as acting attorney general on a temporary basis did not transform his position into a principal office requiring Senate confirmation. To help make that case, the Department of Justice went all the way back to just after the Civil War, 1866, when the Attorney General, who was James Speech at the time, was replaced by an Assistant Attorney General on an interim basis, J. Hubley Ashton. Ashton was unconfirmed, but he only served in that position for 6 days. Already, Trace, Whitaker has been at the Department of Justice longer than that.
Yeah, there goes the precedent. John, what are you hearing from the First Lady's office about National Security Deputy Mira Ricardel?
Well, we're hearing that they don't like her very much, and we're also hearing that most people in the White House don't like her very much. The First Lady's office would like to see her gone. Talking with sources inside the White House, the First Lady's office and the First Lady herself just does not like the way that Mira Ricardel comports herself, the way that she is demeaning to her fellow staff members here at the White House. And so the First Lady's office issued a statement saying, quote, it is the position of the office of the First Lady that she, Ricardel, no longer deserves the honor of serving in this White House. Now, officials here make it very clear that the First Lady and the First Lady's office are not calling for Ricardel to be fired. They are simply stating their opinion that they don't believe she should be working at the White House. Now, Ricardel is an unfamiliar figure to most people. She is the chief of staff at the National Security Council, and she is a very important person to the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, who I'm told is willing to go to the mat to keep her on. Now, if they were to get rid of Ricardel, I'm told that it could get ugly pretty quickly. So, Trace, we're watching this one very closely to see which way it tips.
Yeah. Our chief White House correspondent, John Roberts, live in the North Lawn. John, thank you. Meantime, more on the acting Attorney General, Matthew Whitaker. Let's bring in Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. The judge, by the way, wrote an op-ed for FoxNews.com on the acting AG that will go online tomorrow. Judge, first of all, great to see you, my friend.
Likewise,
Secondly,
Trace.
the op-ed, and I don't want to give away the goods on your op-ed because everybody's going to love it when it hits .com tomorrow. But it's titled, "Will the Real AG Stand Up?" And your argument is that Matthew Whitaker is legally ineligible. But as you just heard John Roberts say, and you read the report, of course, the DOJ says that he is eligible under the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. Your thoughts, Judge?
I was very disappointed to see the lawyers who work for Matthew Whitaker go back to 1866 and look for a precedent there to decide whether or not he was lawfully appointed. I don't care what happened in 1866 because the Congress changed the law in the 1960s and said whoever runs the Justice Department has to be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate because we put too much power in their hands. Not only to, not only to supervise 90,000 people, among whom are the 30,000 that work for the FBI, not only to instigate investigations, but to terminate investigations that have already been started. That kind of power can't go to a political hack. How do we know the person is not a political hack? By subjecting them to Senate confirmation, in which their ideas about the law and their views about who should be prosecuted and who should not be prosecuted can be aired to the satisfaction of the Senate. That's not me. That's the congressional statute that was written in the 1960s, which the Justice Department conveniently overlooks.
But we know now, Judge, but Fox is reporting saying, there was a lot of speculation that President Trump just did this, right? He liked Matthew Whitaker and he just stuck him in there. But now we know that he did some due diligence. He went and he asked the DOJ. He did some looking around. It wasn't willy-nilly. And he figured out, or they told him, yeah, you can do this. This is totally fine.
So you have two statutes. You have one that says whenever there's a vacancy in a principal department of the government, of which the Department of Justice is one, the president can appoint appoint whoever he wants as long as that person has worked for the government for 90 days. You then have a specific statute that just refers to the Department of Justice, which says whenever there's a vacancy in the Department of Justice, the number 2 person who's been nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate, shall fill the role. So when you have 2 statutes that disagree, which one do you follow, the general or the specific? Very clear, you follow the specific. Congress could not have been more precise when it said the number 2 person, the Deputy Attorney General, takes over. Look, all of this is going to be moot because the president will soon nominate someone, and presumably the Senate will confirm whoever he wants to be Attorney General. The problem comes with decisions made by Mr. Whitaker in the interim, because when his position, not if, when his position is found to be legally ineligible, those decisions will become null and void. Okay. Put that toothpaste back in the tube, Trace.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Judge. You're clearly saying in so many words the Democrats are banging the pots and pans because they think that Whitaker might do something in this Robert Mueller, interfere with the Robert Mueller investigation. That's kind of where this goes. I got to go. I'll give you the last 10 seconds on this.
The Democratic fear is shared by a lot of Republicans as well.
Yeah. Judge Andrew Napolitano, good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, Trace.
Meantime, oil prices snapping their worst losing streak ever after 12 straight days of losses. Prices were up today. The Fox Business Network's Jeff Flock is live at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. That's where they trade oil and other commodities. Jeff.
Up today, Trace, but not much, up about 60 cents or so. Yeah, it never happened before that we had a dozen consecutive sessions of losses in oil. Today, we did break it. But I tell you, gas prices, I think, are still going to continue their decline. Take a look at where we are today on gas prices compared to where we were a week ago, a month ago. We continue to get declines. 30-plus days of consecutive declines in gas prices. That is certainly good if you have a car. And now, according to Gas Buddy, there are 5 individual states in the U.S. that have at least one station offering gasoline for less than $2 a gallon. Less than $2 a gallon. And if you think that's good now, it's only going to get better. In fact, Gas Buddy today said, don't fill up your car yet. It's coming down even farther. We are likely to see, this is a tweet from our friend Patrick DeHaan at Gas Buddy, who said we're likely to see hundreds of stations at or under $2 by Thanksgiving. That would be nice. Everybody going to drive to Thanksgiving? Make it a little break. There you go. Trace.
Would be nice, Jeff, unless you're in California, because right outside the door it's about $3.98 a gallon, and the lowest you're going to find it here in the Golden State's about $3.50. It's a bad one. Jeff Flock, live at the Chicago Mercantile.
That's those taxes. They'll get you every time.
And a bunch of them. And they keep going. And they keep coming. They keep them coming. The election again, they said, yeah, keep them coming. Amazon picking a couple of, thank you, Jeff. Amazon picking a couple of new homes for its new headquarters. One of them, New York City, in a neighborhood where the company could get a pretty big tax break. But not everybody is happy about it. The Fox Business Network's Christina Partsinevelos is reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange. Christina.
Yeah, not everybody's happy about it because it could cost taxpayers quite a bit in New York as well as Virginia. But I want to get to just the breaking news right now from the president giving Amazon credit, saying that they took the best deal. They had an interview with the Daily Caller. It's an online platform, and they did speak about Amazon, and President Trump does like the decision of Amazon opening a second headquarters in New York as well as Virginia. But what does that mean in terms of cost? What is New York giving Amazon to try to get them to open their headquarters there? Lots of tax breaks. You got a break of $1.5 billion. That's based on 25,000 new jobs. You got an additional cash grant of $325 million and several other incentives, but we don't know the monetary value behind that. So you're thinking, as a taxpayer in New York City, what is that going to cost me? Specifically about the tax incentives, you take $1.2 billion, you divide it by 25,000. That means each person that's hired by Amazon in New York going to cost $48,000. That's a little bit more than Virginia at $22,000. You look at what Amazon's offering, they're saying they're going to be investing a lot, giving employees jobs. They're going to be spending $2.5 billion in a headquarters, and they project their tax revenue will come in at $10 billion over the next 20 years. You have the governor of New York in a press conference yesterday saying, this is a big money maker. Costs us nothing. Nada. We make money doing this.
Nada. Yeah, Christina Partsinevelos live at the New York Stock Exchange. Good to see you. Thank you. Meantime, a shakeup in the Israeli government over a ceasefire with Hamas. After some of the worst fighting in years, we'll get a live report from Jerusalem. And Mexican drug lord El Chapo on trial here in the U.S. One member of the jury has already quit the case. And when you hear some of the chilling details from prosecutors, you might just understand why. Next. Prosecutors say the notorious Mexican drug lord ordered hits on his own family members and that he used weapons like a gold AK-47 and a handgun encrusted with diamonds. We've also seen some drama. One juror dropping out saying she was too nervous to serve in the case. Brian Yennis is in our New York City newsroom. Brian.
Trace, it seems no one wants to be on the jury that could potentially send the world's most dangerous drug trafficker to prison. 2 jurors were replaced moments before opening statements. One person claiming last-minute financial hardships, the other a female juror providing a doctor's note reportedly saying the trial would make her too anxious and too upset. That same juror sobbed in court last week after she was chosen, saying she feared for her safety. Joaquin Guzman, known as El Chapo, has a reputation for using sicarios or hitmen to kill potential witnesses or those cooperating with prosecutors. For their safety, jurors will in court today. El Chapo smiled and he waved at his wife. He's wearing a suit and tie and no handcuffs. He faces 17 federal charges for leading the world's largest drug trafficking organization, the Sinaloa cartel. Now, if convicted, the 61-year-old will spend the rest of his life in prison. Prosecutors say over 25 years, El Chapo ordered thousands of murders. He amassed $14 billion in personal wealth and became America's top supplier of cocaine, meth, marijuana, and heroin. The government's case centers on the testimonies from dozens of witnesses, including some who've turned on El Chapo. One of those witnesses is Vicente Zambada Niebla. The 43-year-old oversaw cartel logistics and has signed a plea deal. El Chapo's defense team claims Vicente's father, nicknamed El Mayo, was the one that was really in charge of the cartel. El Mayo's brother testified today, identifying El Chapo as the cartel's leader. El Chapo's defense lawyers say that's not true. He was never rich, powerful, or the leader. He just simply enjoyed the notoriety that came with the myth of his nickname. Trace.
Brian Yennis live for us in the New York City newsroom. Brian, thank you. Meantime, a Fox urgent Israel's top defense official quit his job over a ceasefire.
Controversial ceasefire a couple of days ago between Israel and Hamas. Most people who are terribly upset are in the southern Israel. They're the ones who have come under attack from these rockets. And they say the ceasefire is a capitulation and have been taking to the streets chanting disgrace. And they've been calling for Benjamin Netanyahu to resign. They claim this has been a victory for Hamas after what was the most intense round of rocket fire since 2014. 460 rockets in a day came over the border. And today, the fallout from the controversial ceasefire was evident. Following a cabinet meeting, Israel's defense minister, Avigdor Lieberman, abruptly resigned in protest, saying the ceasefire amounted to a surrender and that he could no longer serve a government that endorsed it. His resignation delivers a major blow to Netanyahu's coalition. It leaves him with a majority of just 1. Lieberman has now called for a vote on new elections, something which opposition parties have also echoed. And that election could come as early as February or March. Meanwhile, in Gaza, however, people were cheering. They say Lieberman's resignation marks a political victory for Gaza. So turmoil here. We'll see how it plays out soon. Trace?
Benjamin Hall live for us in our Middle East newsroom. Benjamin, thank you. We'll be right back. And a Fox urgent, we're getting new chilling details about the woman sucked out of a Southwest Airlines jet earlier this year. The details coming in documents from the National Transportation Safety Board at a hearing in D.C. According to testimony from a flight attendant, there was a loud bang when the engine exploded, sounding like a marble hitting glass. She testified that she then saw the shattered window, and outside of that window, a woman's head, torso, and arms. Think about that. Half the woman's body sucked out of a jet window that's only 14 14 inches at its widest. And smeared on the side of the jet, the flight attendant remembered seeing blood. She described grabbing the woman's legs and pulling, but it was too late. The mother of two died from her injuries. As for the cause of the window breaking, the NTSB report notes that pieces of the engine broke off, hitting the window at high speed. Since that incident, officials have taken measures to ensure plane engines are inspected on a more regular basis. Well, the question of whether the Trump administration can ask about citizenship on the next census is now on trial. David Lee Miller is outside the federal court in New York City. David Lee.
Trace, to be or not to be a U.S. citizen? That's the question the government wants to ask, but now a federal judge will decide if they're going to have the chance.
You cannot know your country unless your country knows you.
Mandated by the Constitution, every 10 years the government is required to hold a national head count. As part of the 2020 census, the Trump administration wants to ask all people surveyed if they are a U.S. citizen. New York, joined by 16 other states, is fighting in court to keep the question off limits.
We feel that the Trump administration is trying to politicize the census.
Supporters of the citizenship question say American values are at stake.
It's about ideological warfare.
The lawsuit challenging the census says the citizenship question will scare immigrants from taking part. And as a consequence, certain areas could lose congressional seats and federal money.
The Trump administration is trying to restrict the rights of immigrants, and they're willing to go so far as to undermine the Constitution to get there. That's illegal.
An advocacy group that wants the citizenship question asked says the information gathered could be used to protect voting rights and accuses critics of unfairly charging racism.
This is what they do when they're running out of arguments, is they start to say it's all racist. They're afraid that we're going to get a better handle on the problem of illegal immigration.
The judge in this case is expected to render a decision in about 2 weeks' time, but no matter what he decides, this matter is expected to make its way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Trace?
David Lee Miller live for us in Manhattan. David Lee, thank you. 6 members of one family are suspects in the execution-style killing that rocked a southern Ohio suburb. That, according to police in Pike County, about 90 miles east of Cincinnati. Matt Finn is live in our Midwest News Hub. Matt.
Trace, this is the largest homicide investigation in Ohio's history, and now law enforcement says this entire family might have been slaughtered over child custody.
The images of the houses, the bodies, the scenes, I can never erase them. Even 20 years of law enforcement experience cannot prepare you fully for a day like that day. They did this quickly, coldly, calmly, and very carefully, but not carefully enough.
The suspects are identified as George Wagner, his wife Angela, and their 2 adult sons, George and Jake Wagner, and 2 grandmothers accused of lying to police, Rita Newcomb and Frederica Wagner. Jake Wagner had a child with the youngest female victim, Hannah, and now police indicate something there might have sparked these murders. The victims aged and ranged from 16 to 44 years old, all executed. Trace.
Matt Finn live for us in Chicago. Matt, thank you. Well, at the corner of Wall and Broad, the Dow was down. Now it's up, then it's down again. No, it's down. 217 points. Not great for your 401ks. I'm Trace Gallagher in for Shepard Smith. Your World with Neil Cavuto is next. Have a great afternoon.